Well, happy Tuesday night. As you know, I'm Aaron here in the Bowtie Treasures studio as always. I have a simple project for us tonight, but one that's going to add a lot of impact to this buffet cabinet that I have. I've done this technique before. In fact, I look back, I think the project was named Debbie, and it had somewhat of the same vibe in that it was a buffet and it had decorative doors, and I think it looks really great. So I'm actually copying that design, and I used drop cloth, 2 coats of gray bonding boss. Probably if I knew what I was going to do with it, I would have done white bonding boss. It would have been a little easier, but gray worked nonetheless. And then 2 coats of drop cloth for the win to get us where we are. I'd appreciate it if you said hi, drop a comment in, let me know where you're watching from. Hopefully it's not too cold where you're at. Everything looks to be up and running and working really well, so thank you so much for watching tonight. Let's get right to it. I don't think it's going to be a long live. I don't need to do all the project. Once you get the concept, pretty much it's very straightforward, but some things that might help you. Probably I've got some other lives, especially on YouTube. If you're not following me on YouTube, definitely do that. And you could probably even search antiquing or glaze, and you'll get this technique and a few other projects that I've done. So if you like a variety of colors and things that I've done on it. I've used it for what I like to call shading. Glaze works for that. Voodoo gel stain, also watered down chalk paint. They all kind of accomplish a little bit of the same thing. The advantage of glaze is that it has a little bit more working time. And if you like to use things like Dixie Dirt, the glaze helps grab onto that and really hold it into place as opposed to just using chalk paint. So, and the other good thing is Dixie Belle has a lot of glazes to accomplish the antiquing look. I don't even know if I'd call it antiquing, but I think that's what I've seen around in my years of chalk paint. If you got another word, throw it in the comments, let me know. But we're just going to give it a little bit of that aged look. So like I said, there's different glaze colors out there. And again, you could try even Voodoo gel stain. Voodoo gel stain is a water-based. For glaze, it's also water-based, but it has some top coat to it. So that kind of is a good thing. I'm going to be using gloves only because it's just messy. Don't want to get all the glaze all over my hands and stuff like that. So what I have done, let me just give you a little bit of background on the project. Hang on, I need to switch my screen so I can see what I'm showing you guys. So I've taken the doors off, and the reason for that is because it's easier to work on the sides, and on this project I need to get into the details. So I took all the doors off. You can see that I've taped on the inside just so I have a nice clean line when I paint. And then I'm actually going to keep the original top. Most of the time the tops need sanding, painting, staining, but it's really in good condition. So the previous owner, I purchased it in the States, so the previous owner did a good job taking care of the top. So I actually put some blue tape on it and also put some cardboard on top of it so it's well protected while I do my work. Then I've got a couple boards spanning 2 of the doors. This is just a lot easier for me to work on in this setup than it is to work down below flat. And so in a moment I'll bring it to the top and we'll work on that. But for now, let's maybe start with this decorative corner. I think that'll be a good starting teaching moment from a standpoint of the technique. And so I'm going to bring you down a little bit on that, and we'll start there, and then we'll jump up to one of the doors really quick. Let me just go over quickly what I have for prep items. First of all, I've got a misting bottle. You can use a squirt bottle. The key is when I work with glazing over chalk paint, I like to keep it wet, and that allows me to wipe it off. If you don't mist first, it's going to start soaking into the paint, and you really want to move quickly. So the misting bottle allows me to get the wipe off. So I get a lot of questions about should you top coat first. I never top coat first, but if you feel like you've got a huge area to do and top coating is safer, then by all means. But I always work in a small area. So like this side panel, things like that, I won't do a large. You want to wipe down quickly. So, and I've got a rag that's I squeezed all the water out so it's wet, but not super wet. You don't want to be the wetter it is, the easier you're gonna have it on wiping off the glaze. So we're just I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. And again, the only reason I've got gloves is just because the glaze has the top coat, so it's a little stickier, and over the time of doing all your work, it gets kind of irritating to have sticky fingers when you're trying to work. All right, so misting, don't have to over mist, but just enough to help that glaze move around. So let's go ahead and get in there. What I'm trying to do here is push the glaze into the crevices, but I'm not trying to paint the piece. Now keep in mind, if you want, you can really age your piece by painting the entire piece with this glaze, but what you're simulating is more of over time, maybe as the person for the piece, wipe off all the dust and dirt. And so you can see how I'll move the rag around in different positions. It would also probably be a good idea to consider having multiple rags if you are all in and you can't really go get your rag rinsed out. I do have a bucket of water in front of me, but that's really more if I want to rinse out my brush. All right, so what I'm looking for is a consistent, nice look. What I was going to say is I painted the drop cloth 2 days ago, and because I'm using a wet rag, you want to let this paint dry at least a day, because if you're not careful, you could wet distress your piece. So if you don't want to wet distress, then give the chalk paint some time to cure, not a lot of time. I'm seeing that I'm wiping off maybe more glaze than I want, so I'm going to put a little bit more in there and maybe try and be a little bit more gingerly or exacting around these edges. If that doesn't work, you just might have to come up with a different wiping method. The other thing you can do as well, you can even use a brush and like feather this out, and it'll create a really soft fade, almost like I call it shading, but I am trying to simulate, over time, dirt getting left in the crevices. So what I'm finding is that maybe just the way I'm holding the rag, I'm wiping too much of the cracks out, so I don't want to do that. All right, and if you want, let it dry, apply another one later on, but back to our misting bottle. Again, doesn't matter. I like the DixieBelle misting bottle. So here's the thing, this is where we want to plan. Do we want to paint the whole piece, paint a section and move out? My thought is maybe we'll work from the front to the back so that we're not misting up here trying to get the edge. So I didn't do a practice run, so we're just going to wing it, right? I do want the glaze to get in this lip, this edge. So I do want to get it in there. So let's work on that. I don't need to really mist far ahead. Let me put my rag down. You can use a smaller brush. This might be a little overkill for as small of a crack as we have. But here in this area, I want to push it in there. Really want that. Keep your misting bottle handle handy. If you ever sense that the chalk paint is dry, what I mean dry is that there's no mist there, then I would spray a little bit. You just don't want this to dry on you. So right now I'm kind of starting to think about how far I want to go before I stop and wipe it off. And I think that's probably my comfort zone right there, because I know I sprayed. I've got a little table to my left that'll allow me to set things down. Hold on to that drawer there. That wet rag, the goal is to try and wipe so that most of the drop cloth color is not, or is left. It's very slippery. The original drop cloth is not tinted by this glaze. So in some places I'm going to wipe a little bit more vigorously. Switch rags, because I don't want to tint the paint. If it happens, then I'm going to have to paint the whole piece with glaze, and that's what I was describing I don't really want to do. But the misting is what's allowing me to still have easily wipeable areas. Just put your finger through that rag and get closer if you need to. If ever you do too much, like right there, I got a little extra glaze. It's getting off of my rag. We are at no position, we are at a position where we will have lost only a little bit about of time if I had to repaint this. So here we go. See how I'm manipulating that rag into the gaps. Just looking for any areas that need to be wiped off. So this is really our first test example to see how we like it. I'm not really trying to get all the glaze off, just enough to give us that antique look. And you are the one who gets to determine how much glaze is the antique look for your piece. So there's an example compared to this end that has none. It just isn't, it's not popping like this end is. Okay. So now, and even up here, you know, even if you want to use your finger a little bit to even that out, I'm going to go ahead and work on this side over here. Get some glaze. Try to just put a little bit in there. And I want the glaze everywhere I can get it. That seems like a natural place that dust would have collected. So as I sprayed, you are being strategic on where you put the glaze and where you're spraying. Any spray that you put over your previous work, there's a chance that you could leave water spots. So if you want, you could always lay a rag or something over it if you feel like you really need to protect your work there. But you won't know until you see it, you know, how messy your spray was. But I speak from experience that I usually have some kind of, see how I'm using my finger to almost like wipe that out. But that misting really keeps me protected. My rag will leave residues here and there, so you just keep an eye on your work. If you got a better system, maybe a bag of rag or a smaller sponge or something that you want to use, just try to keep the rag off areas you're not wanting to put glaze, because it'll happen. So basically that's how the antiquing comes into play, is because all of those little corners get done. This is not something that you can't just paint that. You have to do that on purpose. So all right, so there we go. That's before, and then that's after. That's really what we're going for. Not sure why I just spun that around, but you can definitely use Dixie Belle's artist brushes. You know, there's a 1 inch, there's smaller brushes than this that might suit your size of your piece. But again, I'm working quick enough where this brush is doing just fine. I really am pushing that glaze into the cracks. I want it all to be covered really well. And I feel like it's appropriate for the style of furniture. You know, it's not modern, new, not contemporary. I'd call it vintage. Now keep in mind, these decorative panels, the door is wood, but these raised decorative areas are plastic. So I'm not messing up any vintage wood hand carved furniture here. That is for sure. I'm not even sure how old this is. Probably if I find a number on the back. It says, if the number's right, it says 56 on the back. That may be the year, but I can't be sure. If it's not 56, I'll have to look at the other numbers a little closer. Usually there's something like 7- something, and that's usually like the month and year it was made. A lot of the French provincial ones I'll see are 70s. I think we've got it complete, except for, you know what I'm going to do? I keep talking about artist brushes. Let me get one of the artist brushes. This one's probably going to come in handy. This is one of Dixie Belle's artist brushes. They come in, I think, a set of 4 brushes. I'm actually going to use it because I feel like I want to put more glaze right there. So you can see how I can be a little bit more precise and not be so extra with the glaze. Now, to me, I don't want to leave it like that. The alternative to this is use a brush and soften that like shading. And again, if you don't know what I call shading, feel free to search for that either on my Facebook page or on my YouTube. You'll see lots of videos about shading. Shading is like what you might do with wax, where you're just softening an edge. So I put a little bit more in there. It looks like up there's a little bit more needed. I'm not misting because I'm not really putting a lot of paint in here, but I can definitely feel it's dry. I do need to move quickly right there. We'll put a little bit there. So this brush is working great for little touch-ups. And then I'm just going to use my finger in here just to wipe off a little bit of that excess. Now for this size project, I would recommend, and I have, is either mini trips to the sink to keep your brush clean or a bucket of water. But yeah, that looks good. I think that's what we're looking for. So as far as comparison goes, you can see, there goes my camera, the left one has no glaze and the right one does. So a much improved aesthetic. There's so many other options. We can do dry brush, we can glaze, we can even come back in here with some gilding wax. Besides down below and then up here, I feel like that's all going to work together really well and work out nice. Now keep in mind, as far as when you see the finished piece, I'll probably put some in all of these corners, even down below, and that's really going to make this piece work well. So overall, every single bit of decorative trim, all that'll get glazed. Well, I wanted to keep this one short. I could take you along for the whole ride, but I don't want to drag out the obvious technique of how to apply Dyke Brown antique glaze to your project over drop cloth. It could be whatever color you want. They have different colors glaze. I mentioned that at the beginning. You know, you could go with the black. I think there's a teal, and then you can do the same thing almost with Voodoo Gel Stain, and there's a lot of colors of that as well. I technically could even accomplish the same technique with chalk paint. It just feels a little different, and so if you want to try it, it wouldn't be so hard to repaint this panel if it didn't work out. So 3 products that could probably still accomplish the same thing. I hope that was helpful to you. Nice short live tonight. If you have any questions, put those in the comments. I appreciate you watching. I'm Aaron here in the Bowtie Treasure studio. Until next time, do something creative, be awesome, and we'll talk to you later. See you later.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye.